Good morning. It is Monday, July 15th in the unholy year of 2024. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, only one thing to talk about today, and that is the entire situation in the United States and how things are shaping up. First, the Trump assassination attempt. But before I begin that, I would like to clarify a couple of things from my special report of yesterday. And thanks very much for all the feedback I got on that. It was greatly appreciated. It was a busy day, and a couple of things weren't completely explained. I mentioned in that report that the second rule of assassination is not to miss. Yeah, thanks for spotting that. The first rule is to get rid of the assassin. Interesting how these things go. Now, before I delve into quite a bit of stuff here, let's just go into some of the many anomalies of this whole thing that are popping out of the woodwork. Now, these days, everybody who has a cell phone has a camera, and everybody's connected to social media, so if anything happens of significance, there's a massive amount of photographic evidence and eyewitness reports that are immediately accessible. And there's a couple I've picked up on which may not be out there. I would look all over the place. The Times of India actually had a very interesting video that came out this morning showing Secret Service people looking very concerned a minute or so before the shots were fired on former President Trump. But I'm going to throw a couple out there to add. First off, did this kid, and in my book, if you're 20 years old, you're still a kid, did this kid do recon work ahead of time to determine where he would go to get a clear shot of Trump during the event? He just show up with a rifle and decided, that building looks good. Usually when people do things like this, they at least have some familiarity with the territory, and he lived about an hour and a half away or something like that. Again, another one of those things that doesn't make any sense. So is it possible he just showed up with a gun and just everything fell into place? Yeah, I guess it's possible, but The other thing, too, and this is to give some insight into myself. I lived in Washington, D.C. for several years during the Obama administration and ended up walking by the White House more than a few times. That particular part of D.C. is protected by the Secret Service within a few blocks, actually. That's not generally known. I actually got to chat with a few Secret Service people, and these guys are very smart. And when you're walking by the White House, you can feel the eyeballs of the guys up on the roof with sniper rifles. They're usually lying on the ground, but you can just feel the eyeballs on you. Over the many years I've been involved in journalism and government work and things such as that, I've had occasion to meet quite a few federal law enforcement officials, including Secret Service. I was once temporarily assigned to the White House press corps during a overseas trip of then Vice President Al Gore. I got to see these guys in action up close. I always was under the impression that they were the most consummate professionals anywhere in the federal government. You could just feel these guys were trained. You could just feel competence. I've been to the White House on many occasions as a tourist, and once as part of a VIP event. And these people are, at least traditionally, were the best that we had to offer. They they were just super. And they have to be, or had to be. And there's something that is missing with all this. Now, if you look at the many, many hours of video that's already out there, you'll see that they seem to be a little bit klutzy and a little bit unorganized, which is not the way traditionally they operated. But there's something I spotted in the picture of those two snipers on the roof, the ones that apparently took out the shooter, the ones that we're told took out the shooter. And I noticed some things about them. Now, whenever I've run across federal law enforcement agents, they're very, very clean-shaven, and they have a very strict code of presentation. And I have never in my life met any who had beards, a couple with mustaches, but never beards. These two gentlemen on the roof with the high-powered rifles taking out this 20-year-old who was shooting at Trump, they had beards. So I did some checking to the grooming standards of the Secret Service, went to their website, and it's up there because in order to be recruited by the Secret Service, which has a pretty high turnover rate these days, you do have to meet certain criteria, including appearance. Now, they're allowed to have beards, but they have to be very, very shortly trimmed. I looked at the picture, the blow-up of these guys. Their beard was a lot longer than a half inch, and I found that weird. It's not the sort of organization that likes beards. I've had a beard for most of my adult life, and it's just because I'm in the media game, the writing game, where it's more socially acceptable. In law enforcement, it usually isn't. And if that's an organization you want to climb up the ladder, you got to really play by their rules, and they don't like facial hair. They really don't. Just check all the other federal websites for law enforcement, Marshal Service, FBI. They have very strict grooming standards, especially if they're in Executive Protection Detail, which is the branch of the Secret Service that takes care of the president and other VIPs. But then I noticed something else that really didn't add up. The sniper on the left-hand side of that picture we've all seen, you can see a mark on his forearm that appears to be a tattoo. So I went back to the Secret Service website, and sure enough, you're not allowed to have a tattoo if you're in the Secret Service. You have to have it removed before they consider you, especially if it's something that people can see. That didn't add up. As they like to say, that dog don't hunt. So the question has to be raised, were these two guys Secret Service or not? I tend to think no. I could be wrong. I mean, they could have let themselves, they could have been breaking the rules. They could have decided to just grow a beard over the summer. Or one of them could have thought, well, I've always wanted a tattoo, and since I'm going to be sitting on a rooftop today, I'll just take a magic marker and put a fun design on my forearm. Is that possible? Yes. Likely? No. So who are these guys? Well, they say police on the back of their tactical jackets. Were they local police officers? Police departments usually don't like beards either. So who were these guys that waited 42 seconds to shoot at somebody who was about to shoot at the former president of the United States and most likely the next president of the United States? That's an anomaly nobody seems to have picked up on. Grooming standards. Now, is it possible things have just gone to hell with the Secret Service? Well, it looks like they have. There's no excuse for this, guys. Now, if you've ever been to any events where Secret Service are in charge, and I've been to more than my share, especially living in D.C., I've been to a couple of presidential inaugurations. Secret Service people tend to be very professional, but they're very friendly and very kind. And I can say from experience, you do not know the demarcation line of where their protection ends. You don't know that. They don't advertise it. It's very hard to ascertain. There's no yellow tape they put around saying Secret Service on this side, everything else over here is fine. So again, that guy's showing up. How did he know? The way things usually go, anybody climbing onto that roof with a ladder, which we're not really sure where that ladder came from either, would have been met with a law enforcement officer standing up there. There's not a lot of buildings in that area. It's not like downtown New York where you have hundreds of rooftops and windows to worry about. It's pretty much out in the sticks. So we're either dealing with somebody who had some inside information or total incompetence. Frankly, I'm leading towards incompetence just because of the way the Biden administration has functioned. Now, I am not a fan, nor is any sane American, a fan of diversity hiring or minority hiring quotas or hiring people based on their sex or their sexual preference or their race as opposed to their credentials. It's one thing to discriminate against someone because of those things, but it's another thing to hire them on account of them. Now, the Secret Service, from my experience and from history, always picked the best of the best. Doesn't matter who you were, what have you, but you had to be in great physical shape, you had to be smart, you had to be well-trained. And I began to question that when I saw one of the obviously overweight female agents hustling Trump into his SUV, having trouble holstering her weapon. Now, I have worked in armed security. I did that during COVID. In fact, when I had to leave that business, I started this particular podcast and Substack channel. And I practiced every day pulling my weapon out and holstering it, at least a few minutes in the morning. Every single day. I checked out the lady who runs the Secret Service. Her name is Kimberly Cheadle, I believe. Cheadle, I think that's the way the name is pronounced. Now, she has an interesting background. She worked for the Secret Service since 1995, except she did take a hiatus for a while to work for Pepsi to, I guess, make the world safe for flavored sugar water. And then she was brought back after January 6th. Okay. Now, I've met some very competent female Secret Service agents. They exist, but when it comes to management, it takes a different sort of person. She's made a big deal out of diversity hiring. In fact, she says here in the Wikipedia story about her, she said in May of 2023 that she wants to see the Secret Service employing 30% of their workforce as women. Women have to be employed by the year 2030. Not if they're the best, but if they're women. Wow. I'm not saying there aren't good women in the Secret Service. I've met a couple. They're great, but you don't hire someone for any other reason, for any job, unless they're the best you can get. And a family of a firefighter who was killed and two other people who are seriously injured, no word on their condition, paid the price for that diversity. And this is common throughout the Biden administration. This just underscores the total and complete incompetence of this man and everybody who works for him. Joe Biden wasn't a suitable man to be president 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. He's never been that good. Anybody who ever worked the Hill knew his reputation. And this is now coming home to roost. And it makes everybody very, very angry at this. Now, when this is going to be gone through by Congress and everybody's upset with this, the Secret Service was something that was sacred in the federal government. It really was. And honestly, I have had as I said, I've had the honor of meeting some of these guys and actually hanging out with them. There was a purity these people had, and now that's gone. Now, let's address Mr. Biden's address from yesterday when he talked to the country, and what may have been recorded or not, on the need to not have political violence, not solve our problems with violence, and to come together. Well, never in history have there been such hypocritical or bizarre words that have ever come from the Oval Office at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. For years now, the Biden administration and the left-wing political establishment in the United States has vilified, has done everything it can to destroy the lives of everyone who opposed them. Whether it be January 6th, whether it be all of these lawfare actions against your political opponents, families destroyed, people were killed. When George Floyd died, cities burned. And they didn't burn because you were standing up saying it shouldn't happen. We had members of Congress saying that we should be chased down, those who don't agree with us. We should be shamed. We should be outed. We should be harassed. And you talk about violence, you talk about coming together. You and your kind have done everything in your power to drive this country into two camps that have been made to hate each other. There's very few things that really get my blood boiling, but when I was hearing Biden's words last night, I couldn't even breathe. The hypocrisy, insulting the intelligence of so many Americans. I said, this guy's talking, let's make peace after what they've done to us? I know people who have been driven into the dirt because of their political beliefs, lost their jobs, lost their families. I know of people who've taken their own lives. And you think that just after someone took a shot at Trump, who was more than likely egged on, if it was just a lone nut, someone who was egged on by the poison in the media, the poison online. Trump has to be stopped. Trump is a Nazi. Trump is a racist. Trump is going to destroy our democracy. Trump is going to bring about a war. All of this crap that's been coming out of the mainstream media and the left-wing political establishment, and you think there's not going to be any anger over that? And now you're saying you want us all to live together in peace after you've done everything to inflict misery, pain, and agony over those who don't agree with you. How dare you? How dare you? Now, I have the bad news for you, ma'am, the head of the Secret Service. You've been working for the side of the political divide in this country that are very much like rats. In other words, they love to attack and eat their own when survival calls upon it. So expect a lot of people to be raked over the coals over this Trump fiasco. That's if it's just a fiasco. It could be something much worse. But I'm going to point something out here, that criminals are, by definition, stupid, and the people running the United States government now arguably are criminal. Haven't been tried and convicted in a court of law yet, but let's see how history unfolds. Criminals are, by definition, stupid. That's why they're criminals. In fact, police officers love to say to the people they arrest, your stupidity is my job security. But there's something that has to be pointed out here. I'm a student of history, and this is why I take issue with people that are so anxious for violence, so anxious for doing sorts of things that we've been seeing the last few days. I know where it goes. It does not go to a good place. But the Marxist liberal establishment in the United States has pushed things way too far. Now, let me tell you something. It very well may have been a misguided young man that tried to kill Trump and ended up killing a bystander, or could end up killing more than one if they don't pull through. That could be the case. It could just be total stupidity and incompetence on the part of the Secret Service, which is a double crime in my book because it was such a honored institution for so long. But it doesn't matter. As I said in my special report, perception is 90% of reality. The people in this country that are supporters of Trump and now believe that divine providence saved his life, and, well, you can't prove one way or the other in that. If he had not turned his head when he turned his head, he would not be with us today. And if that had happened, this country would be in chaos. And as it's been pointed out by others, it would have been worse than when John F. Kennedy was killed because there's so much anger right now. It would have gone real bad. Real bad. But let me tell you this. I am not a believer in this country coming to blows over everything. I know too much about its history. I know too much about how the world works. But mark my words, over the last few days, since the attempt on Donald Trump's life, more radicals who hate the Marxist liberal establishment have been created in the United States. More have been created who have now a searing bloodlust than have been created among the Palestinians who hate Israel in the last half century. Don't know who they are, and if I did, I'd report them. But the way these things go is radicals were created over the last several days somewhere. Radicals who are just now full of anger beyond reason. And these are the people that do something bad. They're angry at the media. They're angry at the Marxist liberal establishment. They're angry at the people who are advocating the genital mutilation of children because they feel they might be boys or girls. They're angry at losing jobs because they supported Trump. People have been killed for supporting Trump, folks. And they were talking about political violence. When radicals have been created, it's very hard to uncreate them. So unless the Marxist, liberal, left-wing establishment in this country backs off, things are going to get worse and worse and worse, and violence will erupt. I don't want to see that because I know where it's going to go. It's not going to go anyplace good. But this event with Trump has really galvanized a lot of people with their hatred of what's going on at the upper levels of our country and our government and the elite. But again, criminals are stupid, and the people in charge certainly fall into that category. That's it for today. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I can also be reached on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. I can also be reached on Telegram and a few other media platforms if you look for me. And in the meantime, I'd like to add the additional request to be sane and be peaceful. Emotions are running very high in this country, and that never goes into a good place if it's uncontrolled. So be good, be safe, be vigilant, be peaceful, and good day.